Hey everyone, welcome back to another TCG discussion video. Today I'm going to be taking a look at the standard reprint of cards and saying which ones that I would like to see replaced. Obviously this is just a hypothetical. Pokemon is very dead set in their ways and rarely changes their ideas. But here we have 15 cards that I consider to be the staple reprints now. And what I mean by staple reprint is that they're always going to be legal in some form. Something like Crushing Hammer has been legal since 2011. Energy Retrieval has been legal since 2011. Energy Search, a little bit less, but still legal most of the time since then. Energy Switch, legal since 2011. You know, some of these cards like Pokégear, Palpad come in and out, but these are pretty much the cards that Pokemon is keeping around right now. Permanently, the effects that they want to keep in the game. And one of my biggest problems with this set of cards is that a lot of them are just not very good. So I want to take a crack at what I would replace, kind of talk about my problems with these first, and then what I'm going to replace them with. Now, Crushing Hammer is fine. Obviously, we just need a general control card in the format. Not everyone likes Crushing Hammer because there was a point in the game where it was popular in basically every deck just because of how fast the game was. But it is a card that's necessary to have some control presence at the meta, because without it, control just doesn't stand a chance. Energy Retrieval is actually pretty good. You don't see it too much nowadays, but it pops up in decks every now and then because it is just a generally good card. I don't have much of a problem with that. What I do have a problem with is Energy Search. Energy Search is a card that almost never sees play. You only see it in decks that have the ability to search out trainer or item cards specifically, in this case. So something like a Drizzile deck might play it because it's an out to an item or an out to an energy on an item card that you can search with Drizzle. Something like maybe a deck that uses a very heavy Mew from Celebrations engine might do that because they can find items off the top 6 cards of the deck. My biggest issue with Energy Search is most decks are not going to be able to play it because they don't have that trainer/item search engines built into them that's that consistent. And why would you play a trainer card that gets an energy instead of just putting another energy, you know? So Energy Search is a card I have a problem with. We're going to talk about what we replace it with. Then we have Energy Switch, no problems here. Energy Switch is a good card. It sees play every now and then. Hasn't really in the last few years, essentially since Zacian stopped seeing play, it stopped seeing play, so that was the last bastion for that. Palpad I don't have any issues with. I prefer Verse Seeker, but I understand that Verse Seeker, don't want that to be infinitely reprinted. I think Verse Seeker is a card that should just come around every now and then. Frankly, now it should come around. It would be nice to get a reprint, please. Then we have Pokeball. Pokeball is bad. It is pretty much the worst of these cards. It never sees any play, and I do think we have a replacement for Pokeball in mind. So, rather, I don't want to replace Pokeball. I want to rework Pokeball to be more playable. Then we have Pokégear 3.0. I'm fine with Pokégear. It sees play. It's good in some decks, though not all decks. It's just a nice utility card. Pokemon Catcher is fine. It's not very good. It sees play every now and then. It used to see a lot more play back in prior to Gust being on a supporter card. I do think, though, with my changes, that Pokemon Catcher might be a little bit better without even changing the card. Potion sees absolutely no play. Hasn't really seen play since like 2011, 2012, that kind of era. I think 2014 it saw a little bit of play too, because 30 damage is just not enough anymore, frankly. Then we have Rare Candy. Rare Candy is obviously a staple. Comes back to help your stage 2s get into play, but I think Rare Candy could be a little bit better, and we'll talk about that in a bit. Switch is very good, always sees play, always very good. We'll keep Switch around just fine. Great Ball is actually not bad. You don't see it all the time, but it's seen play quite a few different times in the last like 5 years or so that I can think of, so I don't have a problem with Great Ball. Professor's Research is discard your hand, draw 7. This is one of my least favorite effects in the history of the game. Also a very prominent effect in the history of the game in almost every era. Spare a few, like 2018 somewhat. In the 2019 season, unfortunately written by tag teams, otherwise it'd be great not having research around. But, you know, we'll talk about what I'm going to do with it. Then we have Nessa, draw 3. Draw 3 is just not good anymore. Draw 3 hasn't seen play since like 2011. In 2011 cities, there was some Vileplume decks that took advantage of Draw 3 just because It's nice to build a hand under item lock instead of having to be shuffling your hand in with something like N at the time or discarding your hand with Juniper. And then we have Boss's Orders, and I think Supporter Gust is terrible. Now that we have Gets on a Boss's Orders has served its purpose. It's given us a new Gets card. Boss's Orders no longer serves any purpose because it shouldn't have existed in the first place. Now that we have Getsus, it has done all that it needs to do, because all I care about is a new Getsus card. As for the Boss's Orders effect itself, Supporter Gust is very, very toxic, very bad for the game, and I do think we can do better. So let's go take a look at what I decided to change these cards out for to make it a little bit better. Alrighty, so starting with my picks, I have Ultra Ball. And Ultra Ball is kind of a card that we see come around a lot lately, but it isn't always reprinted by the fact that it was gone for about 4 years or so from the game. I think Ultra Ball in the modern era is just a staple card. I don't love it, but as a ball search, there's really not much better of a choice than Ultra Ball to keep around, and you can maybe pair something like, you know, Nest Ball like we have right now in and out of the format, things like Pokemon Communication and the like. If you picked like Pokemon Communication, I wouldn't be mad. It's just, I think Ultra Ball is fine for a modern search option in our very discard fast heavy format, and even with the changes I'm going to make, I think Ultra Ball fits with the theme. Keeping Pal Pad the same, Pal Pad is again very nice. Keeping Energy Retrieval the same, also decent card. Energy Switch the same, again. Hammer the same, Catcher the same, and Catcher gets a little bit better here, we'll talk about that in a bit. Pokegear the same, Switch the same. I think now we're getting onto the cards that aren't the same. Nope, we have Great Ball, keeping Great Ball the same. Here we go, so we have Luxury Ball. This is my replacement with Pokeball. With Ultra Ball, I want to have Luxury Ball reprinted. Luxury Ball back in the day, search your deck for Pokemon that isn't a level X, but you couldn't use any Luxury Ball if there's already a Luxury Ball in your discard pile. So essentially what this means is you get 1 copy in your deck, 2 in some very hyper-aggressive decks. You would play 2 Luxury Ball. Every other deck would play 1 Luxury Ball. And it's just search almost any card, but nowadays you'd be search a Pokemon that's not a rule box. And I think this is a great card to have around. Maybe this isn't the stable card, maybe Ultra Ball is just the better around card to keep around, but I really like this effect and I think it'd be cool to come back and be a staple card for decks. Pokemon Communication would be my other choice if not for these two. Then we have Rare Candy, and the reason I put an old Rare Candy here is not because I want this effect to exactly come back, but I do want to reference it in an improvement to Rare Candy. This Rare Candy says choose one of your basic Pokemon in play. If you have a stage 1 or 2 that evolves from that Pokemon in your hand, put that card in the basic Pokemon. And you can do this on your first turn of the game, and you can do this on the first turn a Pokemon was put down. Now, I don't think that's entirely best for the game. I do not think you should be able to evolve on your first turn. But also, current Rare Candy is not very strong. It's a weak card that essentially, the best stage 2s in Standard right now, like Gardevoir, are good because they have good stage 1s, and don't have to rely exclusively on Rare Candy to set up. I think a balanced way to redo Rare Candy would be to allow it to evolve, not into stage 1s, but into stage 2s, like this Rare Candy, on any turn of the game, the turn you play it down, except for the first turn of the game. So essentially, all that's changing is that you can't use Rare Candy on the first turn of the game with this print, and you can't evolve into stage 1s, only stage 2s from basics, but you are able to play it on your second, third, fourth turn, even if you just played that Pokemon. I think that would make Rare Candy a lot better, give a lot more evolution decks a chance, especially in our current meta. Then we have Professor's Letter. This is my replacement for Energy Search. Professor's Letter says, search your deck for up to 2 basic energy cards, reveal them, and put them into your hand. I think we would have to find a rebrand because Professor's Letter is an item that's very exclusive to the X and Y storyline. It is a part of the game, so you'd have to rebrand it. Maybe just Errata Energy Search to search 2. Essentially, Professor's Letter is, instead of just becoming a card that, why play this when I could just play another energy, it becomes a legitimate utility card. Searching your deck for 2 basic energy on an item is very strong. We saw that with Capacious Bucket back when Palkia V-Star and Radiant Greninja were wreaking havoc. And people hated Capacious Bucket. Not because it just searched water energy and that was very good. People hated it because it was the only deck that could search the 2 energy. If you give everyone Professor's Letter, now we're on a more even playing field. I think Professor's Letter would be a great addition to our standard format, and permanently reprinted as the new energy search option. And it was for like 4 years. Then we have Counter Catcher. Instead of boss's orders, I think that we should stick to counter catcher. There should never be a guaranteed gust effect on a supporter card ever again. It is single-handedly one of the worst additions to the game, starting with the XY era. Obviously, the guaranteed item gust with Pokemon Catcher was also toxic when it wasn't flip, but there was a very good era of the game when Pokemon Catcher was errata before Lysander was printed, and Stage 2s thrived. The decks like Rayquaza had multiple Stage 2s in the back. We had Keldeo with Blastoise being a really good deck. You had Empoleon, Dusknoir, Flygon decks being really good. A Selgor, Flygon decks with Dusknoir being really good. These Stage 2 decks were actually able to succeed because they couldn't just be brought up and killed at any point. Counter Catcher makes it tougher. You can only play it if you're behind on prizes, switch when your opponent's vegetable when they're active. I think this should just be infinitely reprinted. If you think that it's too good on an item card, I wouldn't mind making this the supporter gust of choice. As a replacement for boss's orders, this would be a much better card. I'm going to skip one, go back to that. My replacement for Draw 3 would be Gym Trainer. However, I think Gym Trainer needs to be a bit better. Nessa just says Draw 3. Gym Trainer currently says Draw 2. If any of your Pokemon were knocked out during your opponent's last turn, draw 2 more. I think this isn't bad. However, I think what we need to do is make this Draw 3. Gym Trainer, Draw 3. If any of your Pokemon were knocked out during your opponent's last turn, draw 1 more. So it's essentially the same 4 if you're behind, but make it a base Draw 3 so that it's actually not awful if the effect can't be fulfilled. Because Gym Trainer as is terrible, so is Draw 3 Nessa. I think if you make it a Draw 4 though, there's potential that it could see play in some decks. Maybe we would have to make it so if you're behind on prizes instead of Pokemon knocked out during your opponent's last turn, just because of the way that effects often take knockouts nowadays. That's just my idea. And then finally we have Cynthia, my replacement for Professor's Research. Professor's Research is one of the worst cards to ever come out, and especially because it keeps on getting reprinted, it's making the game much, much worse in its presence. What do we replace this with? The most balanced card possible, Shuffle Draw 6. Shuffle Draw 6 is an incredibly strong effect, but it is balanced in that it helps Stage 2 decks a lot. Evolution decks absolutely love this card. Control decks love this card. Big Basics don't mind it at all. We saw the fact that Cynthia was the best supporter card late into the Sun and Moon era, Sun and Moon to Lost Thunder all the way to Sun and Moon to Ultra Prism. Cynthia was the best supporter card, and while the tag teams did ruin the fun for 4 of those formats, Sun and Moon to Lost Thunder is one of the best modern formats of all time because of Cynthia being the best draw card. There's discard cards like Swampert and Zoroark draw engines, but you're not discarding all the cards from your hand every single turn and just dumping your hand for 7 cards and praying you find things. It's a lot more about thinning your deck and a resource war with your opponent, because you're going to be forced to use all the tools at your arsenal because your opponent's going to not be discarding all their tools. I really like Cynthia, and I think that if this came back to replace Professor's Research, something like a Champions Challenge and then Cynthia at the end, and you could change the card to be whichever champion you would like. Those are the changes I would like to see for the standard format. If we were to change the rotation of cards, let's just look at the old one once again and then look at the new one. I think those cards would be swapped out and we would have a much, much more fun standard format that's more welcoming to evolutions. Obviously Gardevoir is very good right now, but Gardevoir is an exception because it is a good Stage 1. These other Stage 2 decks are going to have a hard time keeping up because they just don't have good Stage 1s, so they rely on bad rare candy and discarding their hand to draw 7 constantly with research. And yeah, I think that can be improved with my list here. Let me know if you have any other cards you'd like to see reprinted in the comments. Maybe you're a big boss coper, you're just like a 0 IQ, like room temperature IQ fan of boss. You just love bringing up Pokemon and not letting your opponent ever evolve. Let me know in the comments down below. Leave a dislike on the video so I can gauge your intelligence. That'd be really sick. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.